All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am outside. I call it Graffiti Alley. I think it's just called like Downtown Alley, but we're gonna call it Graffiti Alley. Now I'm out here for a reason, and in this video, I wanna talk about the importance of depth of field, but not depth of field in and of itself, but more so the importance of having it or not having it when you are doing portrait shoots. I think in our community, we have this, I like to call it a problem, where people always want to shoot wide open because we're always saying, well, the background is distracting, you know, so I picked this location because there's a lot going on. We have the graffiti, we have everything you see that you would see in an alley. And so the natural inclination for a lot of photographers, I think, is, well, I don't want to show this because it's ugly, so I'm going to completely blur it out. And I think that that's a mistake because a lot of times as photographers, we will pick locations specifically, but then when we get to those locations, we just want to blur everything out to the point where you either don't even know where you are or you can't really see the detail where you are. If I was going to pick this location, there's so much texture down here between the colors, the paint, the poles, the trash can, everything that's down here adds texture. And if I was going to specifically choose this location to shoot, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense to completely blur everything out. What is the point of doing that? A lot of times we could just shoot in studio if we just want to have a completely blown out background. So I just want to drive home the point in this video, the importance of understanding what you're wanting to get out of the shot. And if you are at a location that will help tell the story or it will help complement your subject or what you're trying to shoot, it makes sense to include some of that. So I've brought Quinn out here today just to really kind of give an even comparison of what things look like when we shoot the lens wide open and then we step it down to like f4, f5.6, and then we go even further and do like an f11 or an f16. And that really is just the point of this video. I like to drive home intention. When it comes to being a photographer, a videographer, a cinematographer, hell, anything, a director, a producer, intention is the most important thing. And as long as you understand why you're doing something, then it's cool to do it. But don't just do things because a YouTuber told you to do it. Don't just shoot a lens wide open because they say you don't buy a 1.2 to not shoot at 1.2. That's crazy, right? Pick an aperture that makes sense. Pick a location that makes sense. Pick lighting that makes sense. It's all about intention and knowing what it is you're trying to do. If you're at a location like this, you want to be able to show some of this texture. And so that's really all I want to drive home. So that's that. I don't want to keep beating that. So now I'm going to pull Quinn in and I'm going to take some shots and I'm going to put them on the screen so that you can see that even though we are at this location that is very busy, it doesn't necessarily take away from the subject. Now I know this is probably not the best example in the world because there's nothing distracting about Quinn. So you guys are gonna say, well, it's a mannequin, so you can have a busy background because it's not gonna compete with your subject. And that is true, but that comes back to intention, right? So if I was going to be shooting down here with an actual model, I'm not gonna put her in an outfit that's busy, because I know the background is going to be busy. So I'm going to put my subject in something that's not as busy so that the subject isn't competing with the busy background, but I want to still be able to have this texture. So see, that's where intention comes in, and I'm thinking about that ahead of time. I'm not just showing up and just saying, well, this is what I have to work with, what can I do? I'm already going to know that. So I'm going to make sure the subject is not very busy, or I'm going to, if what the subject is going to have on is going to be busy, I'm going to make sure that it's complementary to the background that I have. Okay, so again, it just goes to show the importance of intention and really taking time to think about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, what shot you're trying to get, and then pick things that make sense, that complement each other. But also, you want to make sure you have contrast as well. Contrast is very big in photography as well. And I feel like I'm low-key kind of rambling, but it does bother me sometimes because I feel like as photographers, it's almost like we're just in robot mode and we do the same thing over and over and over and over. And I really want to break that because I think we could create stronger images if we just stop for a second and think about what it is we're trying to do and then be more intentional. Right? So we want contrast as well. So if we're down here, this would be a great location to have somebody in like an evening gown, right? Because there's such a stark contrast between this grit and grime of Graffiti Alley versus somebody that's in a nice evening gown. That contrast is going to be amazing. So all of these things are just things that you have to think about. That being said, don't need to keep saying that. Let's bring her in and then we're going to take some pictures put them on the screen, compare them real quick, and I'm gonna send you on your way. You know, it's kind of like one of those timeshares. You just gotta hang out here for a little bit, and then afterwards, you get something, but you don't get anything after this video. You just get the next video, but you know, whatever, okay? So I'm using just a lens that only goes down to 2.8, so I'm not gonna be able to blur this out as much as you could with the 1.2 or 1.4, but that's okay, I really just wanna show. So right now, I'm gonna take this shot at 2.8, and I'm gonna put that on the screen so you can see what that looks like. And then I'm gonna bring it up to 5.6. And then we're gonna take that shot right there. And then I'm going to bring it up to f11. And take that shot, and for the sake of it, just to round it out, we're gonna go to f22, because why not? So boom, f22. Okay, and so now if we look at if we put these on the screen, you can see how the depth of field has impacted what we can see. Now again, because I'm not shooting at 1.2, you still can kind of get a little bit of texture, so 2.8 actually isn't bad. And the thing about depth of field and aperture is that depending upon how close your subject is to the camera, how much background you have, how close the background is to your subject or far away, all of those things are going to dictate how much it's in focus and out of focus. So there isn't a one way to do it. But what you can see in these 4 images is that sometimes it makes more sense to shoot at a 5.6 or an f8 because we want to get a little bit more of this texture, and at the same time it's not necessarily distracting, but it allows us to see it a little bit more. Now even in f2.8 we can see that there's graffiti on the wall, but we can't necessarily make it out, and maybe we want to be able to have that texture in there versus it just being completely blurred out. So maybe shooting at 5.6 makes sense, or 11 makes sense. So really the whole thing about it is just understanding what it is we're trying to do, what we want our image to look like, and picking an aperture that makes sense to be able to achieve that. And this really goes down to every aspect of what we do. Our settings, right? We're gonna pick settings that make sense. We wouldn't wanna shoot at a sixth of a second if we know there's going to be a ton of motion, right? We're going to up that shutter speed because that's what makes sense based off of that motion. We pick lenses that make sense. We don't pick, you know, a 24 mil if we know we don't want to include a bunch of the background. So we're doing this almost subconsciously sometimes when it comes to certain aspects of what we do. But things like aperture, sometimes we don't think about that. Lighting, we don't always think about that. We just kind of just do what we just are used to doing. And I'm just want to push photographers to think that through and make decisions that make sense based off of what it is you're trying to do.